I'm Matthew Woods, host of Leading Out of the Woods, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Dr. Mark Wilson, a former teacher, coach, principal, a previous Georgia State Principal of the Year, and NASSP National Principal of the Year. His latest book is What They Didn't Teach in Fancy Leadership School, a guide for successful school leadership. Oh, what a powerful book. So much practical information. You're going to love this talk. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. And oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you went to my website, stephenmiletto.com/reviews and left a review. Could you do that for me? What do you think? Could you say a few nice words and maybe 5 stars? That'd be so cool. Thanks so much. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Miletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Miletto.
Mark Wilson was a teacher and a coach and a principal. Since 2012, he's been teaching and coaching principals and assistant principals and aspiring leaders as well. Dr. Wilson has been teaching leadership through classes, through coaching, and through consulting. He's worked with leaders throughout the U.S. and leads multiple innovative leadership efforts throughout Georgia. Mark has collaborated with departments of education, RESAs, school systems, national associations, and thought leaders across the country. Before his current work supporting and developing leaders, Mark was the principal of Morgan County High School in Madison, Georgia, where, because of the great work of his teachers, students, and parents, he was named the National Principal of the Year by the NASSP, National Association of Secondary School Principals. Today we are focused on his latest book, What They Didn't Teach in Fancy Leadership School, a guide for successful school leadership. Mark, welcome back, and thanks for joining me today. Say hi to everyone.
Hello, and Steve, thanks for having me back. It's good to spend time with you on your internationally famous podcast. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, and it's been a while. This is cool. We got a book out there, and we got lots of stuff happening here, so I can't wait to get into this. I mean, your latest book is called What They Didn't Teach in Fancy Leadership School, a guide for successful school leadership. Nice title. Why'd you write this book?
So, Steve, I've been able to do something that a lot of people, I wish that they had the opportunity to do, but I've learned about school leadership from thousands of school leaders in action. I was a school leader. I was assistant principal like you, teacher, assistant principal, and a principal. And reflecting on that, I had a small number of people that I was able to draw from, the people that I had been leaders of the schools where I'd gone, where I had taught, and as an assistant principal, the principals and superintendents. But starting in 2012, I've had over 7,500 coaching sessions. And so it's a unique thing that has given me an inside behind the curtain scene of what it's really like being a school leader for principals and assistant principals. And so it would be wrong to just gather all of that and not share it broadly. I share it particularly specifically with the people that I work with. I'll learn from this principal in one place and share what I learn with the principal in another. This book is really, Steve, it's all the things that I've been working on for the whole time, and in one place, but really based on 7,500 and counting coaching sessions of being able to see what the real is, what gets people, what makes it work, and what can surprise them and keep them from being successful.
Love it. It's awesome, and I can only imagine all the different experiences you've had as you're helping people get through things. And having been in the position, it's a trip. Unless you've done it, you don't know. And sometimes just needing those thoughtful words, or the person who's sitting there asking you the questions, trying to get you to see that you got the answers. I mean, I can only imagine all this stuff you learned from that. So your book is divided into 9 parts. So I'm going to read those 9 parts. It's kickoff, in your head, reaching out, coaching, check yourself, climate, leading, collaboration, and mechanics. The sections are packed full of practical information. I thought we would choose just single something out. And let's start with be yourself. Why'd you start here?
So I do lots of training. As you said, I've had hundreds and hundreds of cohorts. I've taught, I don't know how many thousands of classes. And we always try to begin with school leaders. And I would suggest that regardless of the profession, leadership begins with you. And it begins with you having an understanding of why you do what you do. I always begin people with an activity called life maps, where you are partnered with another colleague in the class and you draw each other's life map, which brings into the focus that you make decisions based on the experiences that you've had, the exposures, the environment, and then your values. And I try to get people to examine those to begin with so that they can have a deeper understanding of themselves and where they're coming from, and not to judge that there's a right way or a right set of experiences, but just to understand that the unique path that led you to the red hot moment that you're leading a group of people, the steps on that path gave you the perspective that you have that's going to come through. And understanding that and acknowledging that is critical, because often people in leadership, they begin to try to figure out what to do and who to be. And if you try to be someone other than yourself, then it's hard. And often that's one of the first questions a new leader is going to think about is, how do I interact with others? And a big part of what I've seen be successful is having clarity about who you are, and then being yourself inside of that. If you try to be like the last person, it's probably not going to fit. But you also have to acknowledge who the others are, who your faculty is, and what they think. Because the really good leaders, they don't just stop at learning the life maps of themselves. They begin to learn how all the other people around them tick.
Very cool. Very cool. Your book has all kinds of awesome ideas and thoughts, and you're getting into things that you can tell this is definitely coming from coaching and working with people, because it's the real stuff that as a principal you think about and you have to deal with and so forth. I can't leave part 1 without asking you about building a team. I mean, what do you mean, and what's so important about this? So much so that you included it in the first part.
So, and this, Steve, from because you have been an excellent principal, an excellent leader. It does begin with you, and leadership matters. You and I both believe that, and we have invested a lot of our lives into the notion that leadership matters. So we try to help leaders grow, right? And but one of the things that you've got to go to next in that whole development of success is developing the team. And there are a lot of smart people who don't know how to develop team. They don't know how to bring people together. And this isn't a race to see who's the smartest or the tallest or the most clever. This is really the measure of your success as a school leader, in my opinion, is how well can you help others be successful, and how can you help them connect with each other to be stronger than they are individually, and which is what team is about. And a lot of schools that I'll visit, I'll bring them together, and we'll be working on team and vision. And almost everyone, Steve, they say, well, we're like a family here. And I push back on them with that and say, tell me what families look like, because I don't know. You might be different, Steve, but I know you're not. But like, families are complicated and messy, and team is so much of what I would suggest that we would aspire to be when we bring people together to administer a school and to have learning for kids. Is that team is that strength that of purpose, and it really is powerful.
Well, you got that right. That is, there's so much there that if nothing else, the support that it can bring to you as you have members who are on board with the vision, and something we'll come to in just a minute. But it's so important, and I just love the fact that you included this so early in the book, because get right to it. One of the things that you can't do this job if you're lacking in this, I mean, I guess you could, but it's going to show rather quickly, is confidence plays a huge role in that of the new principal. This is talked about in part 2, titled "In Your Head." Can you go in there and just share a little bit about what you're talking about when you get into confidence?
Sure, and if you don't mind, I'll say the thing about part 2 in the chapters is, so this book was written about school leadership, and it was written for school leaders. So there are short chapters, and somebody could just pick this up and open it up and read wherever they turn. It's not a John Grisham where you got to make sure you connect page 1 with 193. It's and it's in short bites, because I know the people that I was writing this for, and I will be very delighted if they have time to read 3-5 pages. But it is divided, as you said, Steve, into these different parts, and so much of your work, it does rely on what you allow your thoughts to be. And somebody asked me years ago, back when you and I were doing our principal thing at different places, Steve, somebody said, what do you really want for the kids that leave your high school? Other than a diploma, in addition to a diploma, what do you want? And my one word was confidence. Because if you're confident, your ability to handle unpredictable, unscripted, real world situations is increased. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book, and one of the reasons that I do what I do, is we are getting more and more people into leadership that maybe have not had that experience in their life map that has led them to confidence. Because, I mean, you get confidence through experience, and the fun part of that is most of it's bad experience. It's the failure. It's that wins the day. It's I write in this book about the cleaning substance Formula 409. It's called that because they didn't figure out the right formula with Formula 1 or Formula 113, or that they continued to get what they were after until they got it. And it took 409 times. And I think about like a kid in elementary school, Steve, that's struggling with math. Like, that might even be called Formula 1233, because I think of wonderful teachers that I know and have watched, and you've seen them too. They're the ones that have that foresight and vision and confidence that with enough time, I can help the student get to there. Well, it's the same way with leaders. Is if you've had enough experience and enough things that you've been involved with coming into being a principal or being an assistant principal, then you're able to operate out of confidence rather than fear. That whole thing, the opposite of confidence, the fear, it makes people make bad decisions. If you're afraid you're going to lose your job, you may not do the innovative things that you need to do. That was not you were me. We I don't know if it was confidence or what we had back then, but I think about the things you did and the things I did as principals, and that's what, I hope your listeners know. I mean, you were the Georgia principal of the year following me, and you were the 2 years following me, and then you were the finalist for National Principal of the Year. And I've said before on your show, like, the stuff that you did was more amazing than any of the rest of us. But to say that, you had confidence that you could do something, and in the absence of that, it wouldn't have worked. And I think about everybody who has been deemed successful by outside agencies. All of us, we had that same thing. We had that edge was confidence. And that's one of the things that I hope that we can get our assistant principals and aspiring leaders to think about is work to believe in yourself and bet in yourself. And things don't always go the way you want them to go, but it shouldn't change the way that you approach your life and your job in your head. So that's why that topic's so important. And there is a very noticeable difference between people who are operating with confidence and people who are just fraught with insecurity. And everybody who walks in the building every day, whether it's a teacher, if a teacher is full of insecurity and she's thinking, I don't know if I can face these kids today, that will come out of her in leading the class. If a student is like, I don't like school because I'm always wrong, that has a difference. I think if we had bubble vision and could see what people were thinking, which would be a terrible superpower, by the way.
Yes, it would be.
But if you were able to see that, there's such a difference between people who walk in our building and they're fighting their insecurities versus people who walk in with confidence. And that's why I think it's so important at school. Let's build a place that we grow confidence. And you know how to do that? You have to have a place that's a laboratory and not a museum. You have to have a place where failure is not just acknowledged or accepted, that it's heralded and appreciated, because that's how you get confidence, is you learn how to not do it first.
Love that. Love it. Love it. Love it. They, you're too kind with your words too. And just a note, you're so right. Cause there's, a lot of situations. One of the things that I've noticed in recent years is that, and I mean this not in age, I mean this in experience, the idea that more and more people are taking the principal role who are young. And like, that's what I mean by not in age, but in experience. They're missing some of those key moments that, because you can't, just we know. I mean, you can't, I think we've probably joked about this a number of times, which is, I don't remember that class. Because there's so many things that happen. You're not going to have a class for this. You're not going to have a class for that. You got to figure things out on your own. And some of it, just like you said, is exactly, you make those mistakes and you go, yeah, note to self, don't do that one again. And, but at the same time, what happens is that you've got to have some confidence in your abilities that says, I'm going this way. It's, this is how I'm going to talk about this. This is what how I'm going to bring people together, whatever. And you just kind of believe, you have to develop that belief in yourself that, it's all right to have these voices in the background that are saying to you, are you sure you got this? Are you sure you got this? But, you got to push those away and you got to say, yeah, I got this. And I think it's cool. It's such an important part of what, what you do, and it's good stuff. I'm glad you included it. In part 4, you talk about coaching. Specifically, you have a segment that focuses on talent development. Let's dive into this, because this is something I've seen you do a lot, is working on getting the most out of people.
Well, so we once had a seemingly infinite pool of applicants for teaching jobs, for administrator jobs. I was looking last night, this is being recorded on July the 6th, and I was looking last night, not for the podcast, but just for information. But we have over 1,000 jobs open in math and special ed and science in the state of Georgia right now. And so I'm thinking on July 6th, like, how are we going to find those people? And as we do at each of the systems here and across the nation and beyond, we're going to need to shift from a managerial style into a very, very much a coaching style of how we operate schools, because we're going to have more and more people who have not only less experience, but less background knowledge in what they're doing. And so I would say that, when you and I started, Steve, everybody told us, like, the key is personnel. If you hire well, everything goes well. And which wasn't exactly accurate, but was close enough at a time, mainly because there were plenty of people who could walk in the door and they knew what to do and they knew how to do it. Now we are faced with the need to help people know what to do and how to do it with less experience and less back knowledge. And I just wanted to insist in the book that people begin to, how do you figure out how to do these leadership jobs? A lot of it is what you see is what you have seen is what you do, because that's all you know. And I really tried to draw from this opportunity that I've had to see thousands of school leaders to share different ideas about about where we are right now, and that the key to being successful as a school leader now is to exponentially, and yes, I said that, increase the time that you're spending in classes and with teachers and helping them become better at what they're doing. And simultaneously, for the people who supervise principals, assistant principals, I don't think people should just assume that everybody knows what to do and how to do it, which is really all school is. I mean, it's simple. It's just not easy. School is what we do, how we do it. I think making an assumption that everybody that you hire for an administrative job knows what to do and how to do it is faulty. And if you don't have both a program to prepare people before they get into those jobs and to support them while they're in there, I think you're taking your chances on how successful it is.
Oh, so much so. A bunch of years ago, Jim Collins wrote a book, Good to Great, where he made something become part of our vocabulary, which had to do with getting people in the right seats on the bus. And, it's funny because even with the skills that people do have and they bring to the table, there's always things that they may not have the skills in or not feel the confidence in and stuff like this. And, it's just the ability to take time to work with people on, things that they want to work on and grow in and become better. It's going to pay off 3,000-fold. It's like, and it's such an important part of that. But it's not only that; it's our own growth. The paying attention to, having those coaching moments with people that can help us as the person sitting in the chair or whatever, trying to figure out how to do things. How do we do this? Do you have someone who you can talk to that doesn't have just is not part of the the game of your system or something like this. And instead of, I guess I shouldn't call it that, but it's sometimes it feels that way. But it's the idea that sometimes you need someone to help you work through whatever it is that you're doing. And I think we ignore that about ourselves sometimes because you're in that role and you get to feeling like I'm supposed to do this for everybody else, but not about me. What do you think about that?
It's a great thing you tapped into there. And it makes me think of this, that feedback ought to be something that other people come to us and ask us, how do you do that? And how do you do that well? And I would say that our profession suffers with our relationship with feedback because, and it really ties back into confidence in the idea that we have to present ourselves as perfect to the community, on tests, on accountability notions, in the pursuit of presenting yourself. It's like, I don't know, growing up, I had the benefit of growing up in a blue collar house, and my mom didn't do a whole lot of stuff with presentation at dinner, but man, she could cook and it was great. And I really appreciate the fact that she worked on the product more than she worked on the presentation. I find that we're often torn. We're forced to work on a presentation more than we are the product because I tell you what would give us great confidence, and what does in the places where it works is when there is a continuity between school board, superintendent, and central office and the individual schools, where they get that right, and we're not constantly at the school level like never make a mistake, because that keeps us from focusing on what isn't right. Like the best way to find out what you need to do to get better is to have a genuine analysis. And if you get just a surface analysis, like I don't know how great that is. Like if you go to a dentist and they go, well, all your teeth are there, I guess you're okay. Like that's different than a dentist who looks deeper into it and says, here are 5 things you ought to do. And this is something we could spend a lot of time talking about, but I think one of the holdups for us towards success in schools is not getting to the core of, and as you said, the leaders have to not only that can't be a second thought like you were suggesting it turns out to be, but I think it needs to be something we model, that if we're able to be genuine and look, I mean, if you're a principal or an assistant principal, everybody knows what you're good at and what you're not good at. I mean, they already do. And to front and act like you're good at things that you're not, it's kind of silly, but we actually put a lot of energy into pretending. And I see that frustrating teachers and leaders that, and look, I don't think that it's a bad idea to put our best foot forward, but we need to spend time developing our growth, but we've got to have to start with an accurate mirror, one that tells us what everything really is.
Oh, you got that right. Good stuff. One of the things that, I got to make sure we talk about before we leave your book is, the last couple of years have been a trip. Now, before COVID ever happened, the life of a principal is a trip anyway. And there's so many different things that happen. For example, like, if you're at a high school, you maybe have, you got to go to this sport, you got to deal with this situation with the bus. And at some point you've got to go address whatever some other situation that happened and come up with a way of talking with the group of parents that are going to meet with you the next day, or the group of teachers or whatever. And you have all this stuff, and before you know it, it's like 11:30 at night and you're sitting in your office on the campus at the school. And the night custodian peeks his head in and goes, you going home tonight? Can you talk a little bit about life-work balance? What do you think about this? You have this in your book.
You know this, that I've done a lot on this for a number of years with presentations that I've called Live Well, Lead Well, because the neuroscience of this is pretty clear that your brain isn't built to constantly work. And one of the things that we attract people who care, and that's good. But we also need people who are smart about caring. I've often thought when I've been on an airplane and they get to the part of the safety routine and they say, before attempting to help other people, in the unlikely event that there's loss of cabin pressure or mask will come down, before you try to help other people, put yours on. And I always kind of chuckle because I'm like, if I'm on a plane full of educators, we'll all die because we're always trying to help other people before we help ourselves. And that notion of caring is important, and I don't want to minimize that. It's why we keep coming back to work. But we've got to be smart with our instrument. If we were professional athletes, our knees and our legs and our bodies would be our instrument. And when you are a singer, your voice is your instrument. Our instrument as school leaders it's our brains. And so much of life work balance isn't merely about satisfaction with life. It's also about maintaining your instrument. And through the years, because I've got a lot of people I partner with on Live Well, Lead Well, and we do a lot of different pieces of it to try to help people to focus on what they individually might do. But and a lot of times you get to this and it's like everybody knows you ought to do better with it, but then it's like, but I really can't. And I would say this, that why do we do that? Why do we punish ourselves and work incessantly? And it's because it's the archetype that's been set. Like you were telling that about, being asleep and the night custodian coming. Like when you and I were coming up, like that's the model that we were shown. A new day is, I for some time have suggested, let's change the archetype to something more reasonable. I do think you're going to have to work more if you're an administrator. It's bred in the bone and it's just there. However, I think it can be a more reasonable life. But I think the archetype will change by necessity, because millennials and Gen Zs may be smarter than Gen Xs and baby boomers, because they're like, there are other parts of my life that bring value and bring meaning and purpose, not only my job. And, you and I mean, we were both born in the same year. And by the way, you got something big coming in a few weeks there.
Thanks.
One of those 0 birthdays.
Thanks for the reminder.
Just a reminder, but we were trained to work and work and work. And I think the millennials and Gen Zs, much to Gen Xers and boomers, not thinking this, but I mean, what if they're right? What if you ought to be going home? I mean, you and I are from the generation where it was looked at unfavorably if a teacher took her book bag with her to car rider duty, but because that meant she's on the way out and
Yes.
She is done. But look, I mean, you don't have to stay in your room, and and you have other parts of your life. And like, I think that's the new. And I would encourage all of us to, I don't think it benefits us to wear people out. And I don't think for our leaders who are listening to this, like, don't be mad at your millennials but like pay attention to what they're telling you with their actions. And I hear people, they're just very mad that like these people want to get paid for everything we ask them to do. And I'm like, well, it's a capitalistic society. And so it's kind of set up like that, but we have just, I think about how much time teachers donate. I think about what other profession has homework. Ours. This isn't even professional development and continuing growth. This is like homework. Like our profession famously has homework. And it's, I think how people look at their jobs and their lives is already in the process of changing. And I think we are, if you continue to look at it in the old archetype, I think you do so at your own risk.
Love it. Thank you. Because it's such a huge part of you got to have some concept of it, even if it's just something as simple as, one of the things I learned was I've got this part of me that's my family. And if I want to have that family, I better start scheduling time with them just as much as I got everything else on my calendar. And that just helps you be able to deal with all kinds of other stuff that you do, as long as you're being able to still go coach soccer or go, do the scouting stuff with your kids, or do, whatever it is, it's go fishing and go hiking and stuff like that. And you're going to be doing it by yourself if you're not careful there, that you never put that
That's right
there. Yeah, good stuff. All right. So, part 7 of your book is called Leading. So let's get into leading just a little bit. One of the things that you hear a lot about as a principal or an aspiring principal or something like this is you hear someone talk about the importance of vision. You hear people talking about vision casting and developing a vision. Could you share why understanding vision is important?
So the answer that anybody should give at an interview to be principal, you can't give because they won't hire you. But when they ask you, what will your vision be for the school? You're going to have to say some things because that's what they want you to say. But the right answer to that is, I don't know what the vision is now, because a collective vision is what wins the day. And I need to gather data. I need to talk to the people who work there. We need to consolidate our thoughts and our experiences and our exposures into a common vision. So I've been doing a lot with vision lately, and I'll share because I'm happy to do so. But I've been asking people to bring in a photo that is a highlight of their previous school year. All right. And so it's the end of the year. Bring me a picture that represents, and it doesn't have to represent everything, but like something of that year, that this photo tells what this year was about through your eyes. And so you bring all those together and you look at them and you reflect on what that was. And then the next part is the powerful part, Steve. I ask people, now find a picture that you would bring a year from now. And maybe you're going to have to tell this picture with words. And maybe you can find something on the internet that represents it. Maybe you can draw something. But you just found a photo that was an actual photo from this past year. Now I want you to give this forecast, this vision cast of what this is. I think people get confused on mission and vision, but it is a picture. It's you close your eyes and this is what you see. And I think an easy way to do that is to look back at what you've seen. And this was good. Now I want to look a year ahead. This is it. Well, you do that with a group of people together, and now this is what we want this to look like. And I'll tell you from personal experience. So when I first left the principal's office and went into full-time support of leaders through coaching and consulting, I flew all over the country. It was fun because like all of us in education, I'd been in a school building my whole life. And so now I was out. I was going to famous places, most of them where you have lived, Roswell, New Mexico, and nice. And Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I went to 44 states. I went all over the country, and I felt hollow. And it's not that that's not a good thing to do, and I enjoyed it, and the people are great everywhere. But for me, it wasn't just about the kickoff of the game. I wanted to be around for the whole thing. And I have enjoyed helping people develop over weeks, months, years. And so I still am happy to give a keynote. I'm still happy to roll out and speak to lots and lots of people. I enjoy that, but I find greater purpose and meaning in working with a group of people. But here's how I got to that, Steve. I had to have a vision statement. And so I went and got away, and I'm like, all right, I'm not happy with the way things are now. So what will it look like when things are better? And my answer to that was I was seeing no matter where kids were all over the state of Georgia, they were finding opportunities through education. Like that is the picture I see. I see engineers coming from Camilla, Georgia, and I see artists coming from Pembroke. I see every little nook and corner and cranny of Georgia, like education's really a pathway for them to be successful. And so that's my vision, still is. So once you got a vision of what it looks like, then you can build your mission. And my mission is help school leaders lead schools. So that may sound like, well, that is an awful lot of thinking for something that's so simple, but the simplicity isn't. It's a good thing, because that's, I think, how a school's vision is best, is where it is simple. This is a picture of what we're doing. Our mission is clear. We don't laminate the vision and mission statements, for goodness sakes, because you got to talk about them and let them live. And then the piece that really makes things work are, now, what are the values that drive our day-to-day actions? And those pieces can make nearly any organization successful, in my opinion. That's the secret sauce, if there is such a thing. And I find that often leaders are trying to find the right answer. Like, what should we put for vision? Well, what did we put last time? No. Blank sheets of paper, not even paper. Bring in a picture, draw a picture. And the more aggravating it is to get everybody to agree on it, that's good. That's what you want, because you want people to invest in it so that they'll be able to follow it. So look, vision's the whole thing. I mean, you think about the John Kennedy vision of, over this decade, we will send a man to the moon and bring him back. Like, all right, that's a clear picture. And I often find it through the tragedies that happened in the 60s. It's so poignant to me is that Richard Nixon, the person who hated John Kennedy the most, and vice versa, is the person who talked to him on the phone when they had gone to the moon, which to me means everybody just needs to put your own stuff aside and focus on this vision that matters, because that it's a terrible thing of why that ended up that way. But it, to me, is one of the most miraculous and most poignant things is Kennedy set the vision, and Nixon, his dreaded rival, was the one who was there to make sure that vision happened. See, that's the thing. And that would, vision can unite people if we'll just for a minute, just park it all. And who doesn't want to have a vision of a better tomorrow through learning, through education? It's simple, not easy.
Oh, I love that. That's powerful. Love that discussion. Oh my gosh, man. Your book is full of all kinds of stuff like this. And, you just have, the different practical thoughts and guidance and you're supercharging ideas in our brains to think about, these terms and these things that they've probably heard mentioned to them or run into and stuff like this, and giving us ideas about how to be better at what it is that we want to do. And it's such a powerful book that you've written, Mark. And I'm in the last section of the book, I got to make sure that I bring this, because one of the cool things that, our kids, for the most part, have guardians or parents, and they have a role in our school, and we should be thinking about that role. In the last section, you talk about partnering with parents. Talk about what you think is important here.
So, our relationship with parents needs to be more appropriate for what will help education, and here's what I mean by that is. So one of the things that I'm working with lots of schools is creating videos for their schools that they have internally that teachers can watch, just short 1 to 3 minute videos that they can watch when they need to. But one of the video topics that we do when we're doing that is how to have a conversation with the parent over the phone. And I'm not trying to be silly in any way, but like, a lot of our younger teachers, they don't call anybody, and a lot of our parents don't call anybody. And so we're activating this piece that is necessary. But I just think we've got to get so deeper. Here's why. So Richard Rothstein was an author of a number of books, including What Works in Schools, and he wrote all the way back in 2010 that you can account for a student's performance with school, but it only accounts for about a third of why that student performs the way they do, whether it's good or bad. But these other factors are away from school. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm a school guy. I love school. I love everything about school. But our students and how they perform, it can only be linked about 33% to what we do in school. Now, I know that there are people who are like, oh, no, don't make excuses. It's not excuses. It's math. It's real. And when we acknowledge that and then engage in a meaningful way to activate it, then we're being smart. In my opinion, if funds and resources were available, we need very deep efforts to connect with parents. Here's something that that makes sense. So college football, we're here in Georgia, and college football is a serious proposition 365 days a year. And not only do we follow college football, we follow college football recruiting because we're interested in who the next people will be. What if we address school like that? What if we looked at the kids who were going to come to our building were valued targets? Because if we did, and not just one or two of them, but all of them, what if we treated their parents the way that colleges treat the parents of recruits? Because they have huge staffs, Steve, at each of these Division I schools that work towards recruiting. What if our relationship with parents were more of trying to develop a partnership with them? What if instead of Meet the Teacher Night, which if you have a great Meet the Teacher Night, I'm happy for you and I'm glad that it goes well. But a lot of those are hard because I'll hear teachers at the end, they'll go, the ones that we wanted to come didn't come. And well, maybe because you put them in an environment that wasn't good for them. Like, have you thought about having thank you parents night and have some cornhole games set up in the front, or make a party out of it, have food, but begin not just that, but we need to bridge this, because look, if we are going to provide what people need, we have to look beyond the third that we're doing at school. And I don't think that we can just lean. I don't think it's time to go to teachers and go, now we want you to do another job. We already know you have homework, and we would like to give you an additional job. I think school systems, and I think the school enterprise at large would be so well served by dedicating resources to activate parents rather. And there are so many different things that you can do, but right now, I think it's few and far between that people do more than just kind of parallel play with parents. I think that most places, and look, I'm not trying to throw a rock at us. Like, we got a lot we're already trying to do. I'm suggesting that we are squeezing so hard on the 33% that we have access to. What if we put some effort in some other places? And what if it really improves student achievement? And you know what? We got data that shows that it does, because that is decades long data that says, go back to the Harvard Family Project, that the mere instance of talking about school with one's children or guardian or children you're guard, that increases student performance. And so there's a lot there. And like everything in the book, Steve, this is not meant, it's 244 pages. It's not 2,000 pages. And even if it were, you couldn't cover everything. This is a book of practical pieces that this is kind of like a whole book full of appetizers. Any one of these little small chapters could be a whole book in themselves. And I think the interesting thing is that is the experience of the school principal, is you have that many things that you are working with. That what is the most important? I don't know. I think it's situational. It's a question I ask principals every year is, what is the biggest lift that's necessary at the school this year? And sometimes I'll ask it in the form of, what is the largest roadblock between you and success today? And those questions are worth pondering for people.
Love it. Awesome. All right. I got a question for you that I just got to ask this. If you had a chance to be the closing keynote of a conference for new principals, what would you want them to remember most from your talk as they left the conference and were headed back to their schools?
Well, I have had a chance to do that many times. And so one of the things that I believe is you've got a 72-hour rule, that any conference you go to, you got 72 hours. And if you don't activate something from that conference, it's vapors, it's mist, it's gone. It's a happy memory, but it's not going to change things. I would say this, not to be a contrarian about your question, but I've learned, I try to get people to do something while they're there. And I offer this to everybody for this notion, like, if you're having PD with your teachers, do something while you're there. Don't create another piece of, I hope this will happen when you're gone. Do it right then. And the right then that I try to do with leaders is get out your calendar and put something on the calendar, because to-do lists are a list of future regrets. Our calendar is really, that's what we do. And so I intentionally, with the classes and even keynotes that I do, I'm going to ask people, put something on your calendar right now while you're here. And even if it's revisit this. But I do offer that as an idea for your listeners as doing professional development. I feel like once they cross the threshold of the door, they've gone back into the world that I had just given them escape from. And so I'm best if I do something while I got them.
Gotcha. So good stuff. Mark, if someone wanted to follow up and connect with you and or learn more, where would you send them?
So one website does it all. It's principal-matters.com. And there we have lots of free resources. We have articles that come out every week. We have podcasts that will be coming out each week throughout the upcoming school year, and they're all affiliated with the book. They're connected with the book. And so that's there. You also can purchase the book if you would like to do so. And you can do that at the website. So principal-matters.com. It's in the podcast notes below if you don't have a chance to write it down right now.
That is awesome. And I will have that information in the show notes, so it'll be easy for them to find it, especially if they're listening to us on their phone or whatever, because they can just go right in there and click on that and go there. Last question for you, Mark. Got to ask this. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? And what would you say if given a chance to say thank you?
Fortunately, I have had a chance to say thank you to Coach Marion Waters. He was both a coach and a teacher, and he ended up being principal. I so admired him because of his steadfast, ethical approach to things. There was a student who had been involved in some not so great behaviors in football, away from football, but it was his task to give the award for this particular player. And he stood up, and while most of people were gushing over the people they were talking about, he stood up at the banquet and said, it is my responsibility to offer the blank award, and the person you have selected is blank. And everybody cheered and didn't pay attention, but I don't know what I was thinking being like a 10th grader. Like, that just stuck with me. And I asked him the next day at school, like, what was that all about? And he said, sometimes you have to do things that you wouldn't do otherwise, but you don't have to, you don't have to just cloak yourself all up in it. And he lived that all the time. I just learned so much, ethically from him. And I learned so much academically from another teacher at high school, Carl Beeson, who taught all of us and went to Greer High School in that time, taught us how to write. And he had high standards. And I was greeted my senior year with the words, take out a sheet of paper and number 1 to 10. And again, because he was so adamant about our performance. Honestly, like college and grad school was really easy for me. The next time, I didn't have anybody mark down a paper between Carl Beeson and my doctoral dissertation. So those two teachers,
that is
huge
awesome.
difference.
That is awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Mark. This has been cool. Thank you so much for sharing your book, What They Didn't Teach in Fancy Leadership School, A Guide for Successful School Leadership. What an awesome focus. What an awesome practical tool. Much needed information. And boy, do I wish I had had it when I first started being a principal, because it would have been very helpful. Wishing you the best in all you do, Mark.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for what you do.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.